Welcome to another Business Spotlight, where we share insights, reflections, and pearls of wisdom from local business owners. My name is Kerry James. I'm a business coach and a facilitator. And on this afternoon's Business Spotlight, I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Chris Keeling, founder and CEO of Jobtrain Ltd. Good afternoon to you, Chris, and welcome to Business Spotlight.
Hello, Kerry. Good afternoon, and delighted to be here.
Very good. So let's get straight into it, if we may, please, Chris. So Jobtrain.
Yes.
Bit of a clue in the title, but not completely obvious. Please give us a bit of history. How long have you been leading the business, please, Chris, and what do you specialize in?
Okay. So the business idea came about in about 1998, in the very formative years of the internet. So in fact, the concept we created in the sort of about July, August of 98. Google was actually launched in October that year, so we predated Google. Quite a challenge when it comes to selling an internet-based product when nobody knew what the internet was. It was a business within a business that we being myself and my wife Alison, we owned at the time. It was a executive search company. We acquired that from its previous owners, and as part of that, we separated out what was then Jobtrain. We'd given it a name, and it became its own entity in 2004. The company, you say the name gives it away, and it sort of does, but to be honest, it's a little bit of a misnomer as well. But the company is it supplies what's now known as applicant tracking systems. For the uninitiated, we provide the recruitment software to commercial client organizations to allow them to handle recruitment themselves. We don't do the recruitment. It enables them to create jobs, post jobs, manage candidates, everything through to the issuing of contracts and onboarding. Just as a quick aside, the name Jobtrain, the initial concept was we acquire all this information about candidates while they're applying for a job. And the idea was that you could use some of that information to then support their training once they get into a role, and help support their development. To be honest, that's a concept that's still talked about today, but that requires the meshing of two different systems, which frankly simply doesn't happen in the marketplace for some reason.
Okay, so I've not come across Jobtrain, I have to be honest, Chris. I've worked with one or two recruitment consultancies, and Vincere seems to be the one that comes up quite often. Would you be competing with Vincere, or would you describe it as having CRM capabilities as well as, if you like, CV and interview processing capabilities as well? How does it compare and contrast?
Well, to be fair, I've not heard of Vincere. I suspect what you're describing there, Kerry, is systems that sit within recruitment consultancies, recruitment agencies, recruitment organizations, and we're not. Right. We sit the other side of the tracks. We sit the client side. So the sort of people we work with would include the small and large clients. So we've got some fairly small housing associations, or some of the we've got Scottish Canals, for example, as a client. Then we find ourselves working through mid-tier organizations, and we work with Paul Smith, the fashion house, work with Odeon Cinemas, Toyota are a client of ours. But then we go up as large as the whole of NHS Scotland. So all of the NHS, they don't have trusts like they do in England, they have boards, and we work with all 23 boards across Scotland. We work with a number of universities as well. So the client base is quite broad, but we are very much about enabling clients to handle recruitment themselves and actually save money in terms of agency fees and administration.
So is it quite, on that side of things, is it a relatively competitive space, would you say, Chris?
Yes, it is. It wasn't originally, as you can imagine. There was only about 3 of us, I think, right at the beginning. The competitiveness was trying to get into the market. Once it became more commonplace as to what the what the platform is, what the common terminology is. There was probably a sort of mini explosion of players in the market. A lot of that has consolidated over recent years, and there's probably I mean, the actual numbers will be greater than this, but in reality, in our space, it's probably 5 or 6 serious players who would operate in our space. Plus, there's some US vendors who are larger, often offering ERP systems, of which recruitment may be part, that we compete with.
Got you. Okay. So let's just reflect on the last interesting 3 or 4 years since COVID and lockdown, shall we, Chris? Clearly, there have been a lot of major changes, whether it's inflation rates or interest rates, or lockdown itself, hybrid working, the digital revolution, and I guess other relevant areas would be things like Gen Z having slightly different expectations of what they want from their careers and jobs, and partnerships with their employees, etc. How has all of those changes impacted on your industry and your business in particular, would you say?
Okay, so probably 2 different ways of looking at this. If I look at just our business, we were like many pre-COVID, very office-based. COVID came, that a seismic shock to the economy, to the country. We immediately reverted to home working. We did it the week before. We read the rooms, and actually the Tuesday before lockdown came, we'd already sort of self-imposed our lockdown, and people were working from home. We kept everybody. We didn't furlough anybody. Everybody kept full employment, full salary throughout the lockdown period, and we used it to effectively housekeep. There was, as you can imagine, no new business during that period, so that breathing space, you realize the benefit of actually stepping off the hamster wheel and giving yourself time to think and time to reassess. And we put some really good processes in place, and we tidied up bits of our system that we always felt, oh, we must get round to that, but you never have time. So we worked really productively. I think the whole team did during that time. We've now reverted back to partial office working. We encourage people to come in 3 days a week, to work collaboratively. But I think one thing we all learned, I don't think it's just us as a business, but I think as a country, that simply demanding people are in 5 days a week for everyone in the business, where people are sometimes traveling a bit of distance to commute into work and spending an hour and a half commuting each way. I think for what I'd rather they get up and are on a system and engaging and doing what they should be doing. For me, it's all about output. It's not about input. It's about what people do, not turning up on time and things like that. So for us, I think it's allowed us to grow as a business positively. Interesting you talk then about candidates and what are the changing candidate experiences. And you're right, that's driven by changes in society, is driven by changes in generations and changes in technology. We have a huge amount of candidates who touch our system each year. We're going to the millions, and we have a talent intelligence unit within our organization that looks at all the traffic, all the behaviors that we can see from candidates. So we can tell what time of day they look for a job, what time of day they start applying for a job, what device do they start applying from, how long does it take them, and so forth. And but in the analysis, we can tell that 85% of candidates actually start looking for a job on their mobile phone. And predominantly, they'll look typically on the commute, depending on which type of role you're looking for. But if you look at volume recruitment, a lot of people commute in and out on a bus, on a train, maybe a car share, and they'll sit on the phone and they'll start searching for a job then. If your candidate experience doesn't allow a candidate to quickly, when they find a job, to engage with you, to complete, show an interest, complete an application, then you're actually creating a barrier. And of the 85% who start looking, you've got to question, well, how many of those would think, oh, I'll come back to that later when I found a PC? And not everyone has a PC at home anymore. Most of them will sit on the phone. And if it's not particularly user-friendly, you're going to lose a lot of candidates at that point. So making sure our system, and actually for our clients, that their experience is geared towards Gen Z and geared towards candidate behavior is a critical part of our own development of a solution.
Very good, interesting stuff. So Chris, apart from aligning technology with people's way of operating, if you like, what else might be the key challenges to the business today?
Well, business growth is always a challenge. Traditionally, we've been a fairly sort of jack of all trades. If you look at the profile, 140 clients, and we're probably spread across 24 different industries. There isn't really a pattern traditionally to how we acquire new business. They've come from every shape and size point on the compass of the economy. What we have done particularly in recent times is focus on very specific sectors as a growth area. So we've done quite a bit of work with the NHS, building on our experience in Scotland, but now bringing it into NHS England. That's been a bit of a closed market, to be honest, with some peculiar barriers to entry, but some of which are technology barriers that have to be overcome. And it's a sort of locked out market, so it's been quite a challenge, but we've overcome that. So that's a very positive step forward for us. Other areas of care is a natural, there is always a natural demand for care, but it's such a huge challenge for anybody working in care to find staff and retain staff. And what we've created there as a solution is particularly focusing on candidate attraction, and then how quickly and how effectively you onboard a candidate. And by onboard, I mean, once you've offered them a job, how effectively and how engaged are you with that candidate in the gap between offering the job and the day they start in that business? Now, we know, here's a few more, I love a good stat, Kerry, but from our talent intelligence, we know that it's just short of 10% of candidates will drop off from saying yes, accepting a job and actually starting. Mm-hmm. And that can be very expensive for organizations and hugely frustrating. So having effective onboarding is a huge boom. And that's worked brilliantly in the care sector. The third area is that of local government, where we feel we've had a steady, good foothold in for a number of years, but we've not particularly focused on that as an area to grow in. But this last 6 to 12 months, it's been fantastic in terms of again, we've taken all that learning, the candidate experience, making sure sites are accessible, that they are easily, that we've got recruitment processes that are easy for candidates to use, that the barriers for actually hiring them are reduced, that everything is found on one screen for a recruitment team. And that's proving a real success. So, we've just been awarded a contract to manage all of the Greater Manchester councils, with the exception of Manchester City Council, which went their own direction. But the other 12 councils and Transport for Greater Manchester will all now use Jobtrain system to manage their recruitment activity moving forward.
Very good. So it sounds like it's really paid off to really flex your processes with the differing candidate experiences with different sectors. That's great. Very good. So what about aspirations for the business then, Chris? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, and how different a picture does that look like compared to today?
That's all, goes back to, I suddenly feel back in sixth form, where your careers teacher would ask you about your 5-year plan. And I've never had a 5-year plan, if I'm being honest. And people who join the business, I'll often say, they'll ask me about particularly in the early days. Where do you think my career could go? And if I join, where do you see me in 2 or 3 years' time? And sorry, I haven't a clue. I said, I can't even see where we'll be in 2 or 3 years' time. We're on a journey, and I think we quite enjoy the journey. We quite enjoy the innovation, the dynamism, the energy within the business. All of that exists now. All of that is very much in play. I've got a really good senior leadership team who've been all part of the business now for, I think their average tenure is 15 years. We've got great domain knowledge. They've got a good dynamic, and it's just about, to be honest, it's the thrill of competition. It's knowing we always want to be better. And we've got a sign on our wall in our office that tells everyone, so don't just be good, be brilliant. And that's really where we aspire to. So in 5 years' time, I just hope we're more brilliant than we are now.
Very good. Okay, well, let's dig a little bit deeper on that one then, Chris. Clearly, learning is very important to you and to the success you've achieved. So, as a business owner and a business leader, and if you were starting a business again, what would you say your top lessons? What advice might you give yourself if you were starting again? Do you think, Chris?
It's always tricky, isn't it? You could always learn so many lessons along the way. I was talking to a fellow business leader about this only last week and pondering if I were to do this all again. And I was, say, 40 years old, not 60 years old. I'd have been more open, I think, to looking for external investment quicker in order to accelerate the growth. But in this conversation, we also thought, but I couldn't actually have got external investment because the market wasn't mature enough, and we didn't actually know what the market was and what the product was. It was when you're right at the vanguard, you're having to convince people of everything, whereas if you look at it now, people want to jump on board with you because they can all see what your vision was. It's very difficult just to sell a vision. Although if I was starting this type of business today, I would probably look for strength in partnerships is always good, and don't be afraid to take investment if you know what you want to do with it. One lesson I did teach myself right at the beginning was I only ever wanted a business that was built on the values that I wanted. So, and the essence of that was I never wanted to manage anybody else in the way that I wouldn't want to be managed. And I'd worked with some really good managers and some really shocking managers, some great organizations and some awful organizations before I entered this. I spent 12 years in HR working in different sectors. And you live and learn from that. And even the bad people that you work with, you think, okay, every one of them had a quality, everyone had something good about them. It's just that they often lost the way because of the way that they managed others. So right at the beginning, I thought, no, we're going to, I think a business has to have its integrity, and it has to have a distinct culture to it. So I think the one thing I'd encourage anybody to do is build it from the culture, not from a product, not from finance, but actually start with the culture of the business.
I've run a couple of values, vision, mission, values workshops in the last few weeks, actually, Chris, encouraging my clients to be explicit about their expectations around the values and behavior. And you mentioned dynamism and I think innovation and energy, for example. Do you have your kind of 4 to 6 headline values that you use to recruit and manage people?
We've got a mission statement, which is about delivering recruitment technology that keeps people at the heart of the process. Important, that's people. We have on our walls, on our doors in the building, we've got the words knowledgeable, innovative, and supportive, which I think are 3 pillars behind the business. Now, one of our directors, one of our members of the senior leadership team, is she's head of client services as well as head of people, and she's actually undertaking a project at the moment. It's part of her dissertation to look at corporate culture and company culture. So she's doing a piece at the moment to try and define in the eyes of our own employees what they believe our culture is. I've never actually sat down and properly defined what I think the culture is, and that's a lesson, I think, in itself. I think the culture comes from it's defined by the people within the company, and yes, you can shape it from the top in the way that you behave and the things you say and what you do, but you can't force it on people. They've either got to buy into what you're trying to do and sort of get it, or they don't. So I'm actually quite intrigued when Claire comes back with her work in just over a month's time to think, so what are the words that people use?
Well, I mean, just a couple of observations there, really, Chris. Firstly, we talk about the origins about values being the business owners, the team. And then the third one, maybe not so obvious one, is what behaviors and values do you need so that your customers come back and buy from you again? That might be a little reflection that might be valuable. And then I'd certainly encourage that we can read that Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage, and he talks about different types of values: core values, aspirational values, accidental values, and permission to play values. So that's if that's a topic you're interested in exploring more, I'd certainly recommend that as a reference point.
Excellent.
Very good. Well, it's been great to hear your reflections and your lessons and your story, Chris. One final question, if I may. If there's anybody, maybe a candidate, or maybe more likely on the client side, that's interested in a follow-up conversation, what might be a sensible next step, would you say, Chris?
Well, if it's a client who's interested in looking at what we can do to support them, I'd steer them towards our website, jobtrain.co.uk. There's loads of it's not a sales site. Hopefully people will see it. It's a site that's got resources within it, that it's full of information and data as well about recruitment, about talent acquisition, about what good looks like. If people want to get in touch with me, if they want to, believe me, this is quite a punctuated version. I've got so much I could spout on about if I'm given the opportunity. But if they're interested in the story, they want to know more, they want to know something about the challenges, then they can contact me on LinkedIn. I've got my profile on LinkedIn. I'm happy to engage with anybody there.
Very good. Well, we'll add the URL, your website, to the videos that come out from today, Chris. But once again, thanks ever so much for your time, for sharing your story, and all the very best with Jobtrain.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Kerry.
All the best. Bye for now.
Bye.